Imagine a country where billionaires race to space while, just a few blocks away, families sleep in tents under freeway bridges. A land where a cup of coffee can spark $1 million lawsuit, but finding a place to live feels impossible for hundreds of thousands. This is America, a symbol of power and prosperity, yet also a land of paradoxes where dreams and despair exist side by side. Today, we'll uncover the shocking truths behind wealth, homelessness, and the strangest lawsuits you'll ever hear. A head count in the cold. Every January, while much of the country sleeps under winter skies, thousands of volunteers fan out with clipboards and flashlights to answer a painful question. How many people, on this one night, are without a home? In January 2024, that number was 771,480, the highest since the count began. Half were in shelters or transitional housing. Half were sleeping outside, in cars, in doorways, in places never meant for a bed. California, bearer of the American dream mythology, carried a staggering share. A statewide analysis of local counts put the number close to 186,000 in 2024, up from the prior year, despite billions poured into programs and emergency responses. The crisis grew anyway, slow as rust, relentless as tide. You can argue with perspectives, you can't argue with headcounts. They are taken on cold nights precisely because fewer people are couchsurfing and more are visible. Each tally is a photograph in time, imperfect but honest about what the lens can see. The missing homes. Homelessness is the visible tip of a market that doesn't pencil out for the poorest renters. In 2024, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition estimated the U.S. was short about 7.3 million affordable and available homes for extremely low-income renters. Put differently, for every 100 renter households at the bottom of the income ladder, only about 34 to 35 homes are both affordable and actually available. That arithmetic guarantees displacement. It manufactures instability. When that shortage meets rising rents and flat wages, budgets snap. Cities debate zoning reform. Developers weigh profit margins. Families watch the calendar on temporary subsidies as if it were a fuse burning down. Some counties make headway one year only to lose ground the next. The overall shortage is a canyon. Chapter 3. The slow tilt of the scales. While the floor gives way, the ceiling gets higher. The Federal Reserve's distributional financial accounts show a long arc of wealth concentrating toward the top, with the top 10% holding roughly 2/3 of household wealth, and the bottom half holding only a sliver in comparison. The precise shares wiggle quarter to quarter, but the pattern is granite. Compounding advantages layered on asset ownership, layered on tax treatment, layered on time. Look at a different dial. Union membership. In 1983, about 1 in 5 workers belonged to a union. In 2024, it was 9.9%, a record low in modern data. Bargaining power is a bridge between productivity and pay. When it crumbles, the bridge carries less of the load. Which brings us to the productivity pay gap. Since the late 1970s, overall productivity has far outpaced typical workers' pay. A polite way of saying the pie got bigger and the slices didn't. The Economic Policy Institute has tracked this divergence for years. It's not a blip, but a design choice reflected in policy, bargaining power, and market structure. These trends, wealth concentration, the erosion of collective bargaining, the split between productivity and wages, don't cause homelessness by themselves, but they set the weather. When a family faces a layoff, a medical bill, a rent hike, their margin for error is paper-thin. The laws of the land. So why, in a nation where so many fall through gaps, do we also see so many lawsuits? Some deadly serious, some undeniably odd? Part of the answer is in the architecture of the system. Courts are open. Filing fees are often modest. Many small claims courts don't require lawyers. Class actions exist by design to aggregate small injuries that are irrational to pursue individually. On the federal side, case filings surge and ebb with mass torts, antitrust cycles, civil rights enforcement, immigration shifts. In 2023, federal civil filings surged, propelled by massive product liability cases against companies like 3M and Johnson & Johnson. In 2024, they fell as those mass tort pipelines tapered after settlements. That's the judiciary's tide chart. And then there are the stories that became parables. The hot coffee case wasn't a joke. It was a woman named Stella Liebeck, 79, who suffered third-degree burns when coffee held near 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit soaked her clothing and skin. A jury heard evidence that the coffee was hot enough to cause severe burns in seconds, and that McDonald's had long been aware of similar injuries. The case settled on appeal, but the frivolous lawsuit myth outlived the facts because the punchline was easier. The too much ice case against Starbucks? That one was dismissed. A federal judge reasoned that a reasonable consumer can, in fact, see the ice and ask for less. Not every gripe becomes law. The courthouse isn't magic. Here's the twist. A litigious culture isn't merely a love of fighting. It's a symptom of privatized problem-solving. When safety nets fray, when agencies lag, when housing is scarce, the courtroom becomes the place where individuals seek leverage. Against corporations, against landlords, sometimes against fate. The civil docket reflects both harm and hope. Harm in the injuries alleged. Hope that a remedy exists somewhere, if only on paper. Chapter 5. California Dreaming, California Counting. Walk a Los Angeles riverbed in the blue hour, and you'll see tents pinned down with shopping carts. Walk the financial district at noon, and you'll pass suits whose bonuses could buy a block. California is not the only stage for this juxtaposition, but it is the loudest. Tens of thousands unsheltered. Tens of billions in housing initiatives. A dream marketed globally. A reality negotiated on asphalt. In 2024 snapshot, the total crossed 185,000 to 186,000, rising despite new beds and daunting cost curves. Sometimes the numbers move in the right direction locally. A new supportive housing complex opens, a veteran finally gets permanent keys, but the state as a whole feels like a bathtub with the faucet and the drain open. The faucet, high rents, a shortage of low-rent units, mental health and substance use crises, stagnant or volatile incomes. The drain, long permitting, high building costs, opposition to density, and the slow pace of services standing up at scale. The result is water around the ankles, even as more towels arrive. The middle that isn't. Economists like tidy bell curves. Reality prefers cliffs. The middle class still exists, yes, but as a thinner ledge. In good times, the ledge is wide enough for families to pay down debt, salt away savings, help their kids land softly. In rough times, the ledge narrows. A divorce, a car repair, a medical copay, and the budget staggers. And the middle is not just an income. It's the bundle of security that income is supposed to buy. Stable housing, health care without fear, safe childcare, at least one decent vacation every other year, and a retirement that isn't a cliff but a glide path. When rent or a mortgage consumes half a paycheck, everything else becomes a juggling act with too many knives. How the engines mesh. The engines in this story are not mysterious. They have serial numbers and policy histories. Wealth compounding and policy. Tax treatment favors capital gains and step-ups in basis. Asset ownership amplifies itself. Meanwhile, the bottom half has little exposure to the stock market and thin housing equity. Over decades, that makes the wealth ladder more like an escalator for those already on it. Bargaining power and the wage link. The steady decline in union density leaves more workers negotiating alone. Without coordinated bargaining, broad productivity gains leak away from paychecks and pool in profits and asset prices. Housing supply at the bottom. Markets rarely build new units that are affordable to the lowest income renters without subsidy. Construction costs rise. Land is scarce where jobs are. Zoning throttles density. Financing flows to higher returns. The math leaves a 7.3 million home crater. National Low-Income Housing Coalition. Courts as pressure valves. When public systems don't resolve harm swiftly, defective products, deceptive ads, wage theft, unsafe conditions, people sue. Some cases are frivolous. Some are lifelines. Many are signals that something upstream failed. Filings swell with mass torts one year and ebb the next as those cases settle. None of these engines is inevitable. All of them are adjustable. What works? A different kind of story is possible because we've seen it in pockets. Housing first models that provide permanent housing before tackling other issues have shown strong results at reducing chronic homelessness when funded at scale and paired with services. Deeply targeted rent support vouchers that actually reach the poorest renters stabilizes households and lowers shelter entries, but coverage remains far below need. Zoning reform and by-right approvals for multifamily housing increase supply where it's needed most, if local politics allow it. Union and worker voice experiments, sectoral bargaining, wage boards, can rebuild the link between productivity and pay, especially where classic models are hard to implement. Civil justice reforms that speed valid claims and deter junk filings can keep the courthouse from becoming either a lottery or a labyrinth. None of this is as sensational as a headline about a hot coffee verdict. But it is how lives change at scale. Not by miracle, but by maintenance. Faces, not just figures. A statistic tells you how many. A story tells you who. A veteran in Phoenix who can finally refrigerate his insulin because permanent supportive housing came with a mini fridge. A home health aide in Miami whose rent voucher arrived 1 week before eviction court. A barista in Chicago who laughs at the ICE lawsuit because she's too busy asking if you want light ice to save a buck. A retired teacher in Connecticut who will never read a Federal Reserve release but can recite the price of eggs in her sleep. A software engineer in San Jose who believes, correctly, that a duplex on his street won't end civilization. They're all inside this paradox, breathing it, not debating it. Chapter 10, The Ending We Choose. America's contradictions are not defects of character. They're the sum of decisions. We can tune the engines. We can build the apartments we say we need, where we need them. We can tax as if the goal were shared prosperity over several generations, not a scoreboard. We can rebuild bargaining structures that make a raise the default outcome of growth, not an accident. We can design courts that are unafraid to punish harm and untempted by theater. Or we can keep writing the same story. A coast-to-coast stage where fortune and misfortune pass each other on the sidewalk without looking up. The simple truth is as old as politics. We get the America we fund. 771,480 people experienced homelessness on a single night in January 2024. California's 2024 point-in-time counts sum to 186,000 statewide. U.S. shortage of 7.3 million affordable and available rental homes for extremely low-income renters. Only 34.35 per 100 households. National Low-Income Housing Coalition. Wealth concentration trends and shares by percentile groups. Federal Reserve distributional financial accounts. Union membership rate at 9.9% in 2024. BLS. Productivity pay divergence since late 1970s. Economic Policy Institute. Economic Policy Institute. Federal filings surged with mass torts in 2023, declined in 2024 as those cases tapered. Reuters. Federal caseload statistics. U.S. courts. Liebeck v. McDonald's. Hot coffee. Coffee at 181.90 degree F. Severe burns. Context often misreported. Starbucks. Too much ice case dismissed by federal judge. If you came for a tidy moral, there isn't one. There's only a question. Which levers will we pull and how soon? Because the engines are still running and people are still riding them, up, down, and too often off the edge.